AM.
Earlier I was asking you about national account managers, and that's how you referred to yourself, as a national account manager?
Correct.
And there were several other national account managers at the same time as
Correct.
you. And did you all get together occasionally?
It varies when we'd have sales meetings or if we worked a trade show together.
And how often did that occur?
It varied from year to year, but usually once a quarter,
And would you also communicate by email frequently?
certainly.
And in your conversations with the other national account managers, did you talk about any difficulties or issues you were having with clients or customers?
Could have.
And what are the other kinds of things that you would talk about with your national account manager colleagues?
Just basically business of, what account's doing what your account, how did you handle this, and, comparison of accounts.
And did you have a good relationship with your co-national account managers?
I believe so.
And did you have a better relationship with some than others?
I'm sure I did.
Do you recall who among the group were you closest to?
Oh, Bonnie knew, Dave Irwin probably.
And do you recall why those two in particular?
No, there's personalities probably just meshed up properly.
And did you not get along with any of your
No.
co-account managers? No. Where we left off, I was asking you about suspicious orders. And are you familiar with the characteristics of a suspicious order?
Objection to form.
Well, define characteristics, please.
Well, can you define the characteristics of a suspicious order?
Objection to form.
That wasn't my job. You'd have to ask Aaron Harper what the characteristics are.
Did you have any sense at all that you recall of what the characteristics were of a suspicious order?
Objection to form.
On a wholesale level, if the order was over their normal averages, that would most likely by a department, by the suspicious product monitoring people, be tagged as a suspicious order.
And that would be considered a red flag?
Objection to form.
Is that how that term was used?
Objection to
I
form.
don't know if we use that term, but that's, it would, if the volumes were such and the average, or the order was over a certain parameter, which I did not set, that was set by the product monitoring people, would be tagged as a suspicious order.
And can you think of other circumstances that would get an order tagged as suspicious?
Objection to form.
New product that they hadn't ordered before.
Okay. Anything else?
Objection.
That's all I can think of at this point.
And were you involved at all in helping Mallinckrodt identify suspicious orders?
No, I didn't see the orders. The orders all came in computerized orders, so I didn't see the orders. So that was left up to our product monitoring people.
And you've mentioned Karen Harper a number of times. Does she fall under the product monitoring people category?
I believe so.
And do you recall what her position was?
I'm not certain what her title was.
And did the product monitoring people consult with you about orders that they thought might be suspicious?
I would get an email if they had a suspicious order.
And then what would you do?
I would have to follow up with the account to find out why an order may be higher than the norm and clarify it.
And prior to 2011, did you ever recommend that an order be canceled because you believed it was suspicious?
Not that I recall.
And after 2011, do you recall that?
Not that I recall.
Were there any incentives offered to you to report suspicious orders?
No.
When you were evaluated, was there any consideration of whether you had identified suspicious orders?
Objection to form.
I don't recall.
Would it have been appropriate for you, as a national account manager for Mallinckrodt, to ask a distributor client to ship opioids to a pharmacy as a favor for a family member of a customer?
Objection to form.
No.
Why not?
Objection to form.
Why would I do that? No.
No, because it would be illegal?
Objection to form.
I would never do it. It's not, anything to do with our products and family members was prohibited,
Prohibited by Mallinckrodt
most
Objection
likely,
to form.
yes.
and prohibited by the DEA
I
as
would
well?
imagine.
Objection to
so.
form.
Mr. Becker, do you agree that there's an opioid crisis in this country?
I believe he asked me that before. I said yes.
And in what year did you realize that there was an opioid crisis in this
I
country?
don't recall what year I realized it.
Was it after the time you started working for Mallinckrodt?
Objection to form.
After I first started working there, yes.
Early in your time there?
I wouldn't say early.
And how did you become aware that there was an opioid crisis in this country?
Various news articles and things I would read, periodicals, business periodicals.
And did you ever investigate the extent to which pills manufactured by Mallinckrodt contributed to the problem?
Objection to form.
Could you repeat the question?
Did you ever investigate the extent to which pills manufactured by Mallinckrodt contributed to the opioid crisis in this country?
Objection to form.
Did you evaluate whether particular types of pills manufactured by Mallinckrodt were prone to abuse or diversion?
Objection to form.
Repeat that, please.
Did you evaluate whether particular types of pills manufactured by Mallinckrodt were prone to abuse or diversion?
I didn't evaluate, no.
I think there was a cough while you were, did you get the answer?
I did not evaluate, no.
Are you aware that oxycodone 15 milligram and 30 milligram were the most widely abused and diverted Mallinckrodt products?
Objection to form.
No.
Are you aware that your distributor clients purchased millions of these pills from Mallinckrodt?
Objection to form.
Not certain how many they purchased.
But you were aware when you worked there of the number of pills that your customers purchased?
Objection to
I
form.
had no idea on the number of pills. I didn't use a tablet count on purchases.
What did you use?
Bottles,
How many pills?
cases. I never saw the orders. All the orders were done electronically.
So if the metric you used was bottles, how many pills are in a bottle?
It would vary on the type of bottle that was used.
And was there no standard measure when you referred to a
There
bottle?
was hundreds and 500s, then there was unit of use,
Okay,
or
but-
unit dose.
But when you looked at the number of bottles of pills, there was no particular number of pills that you knew were in any bottle?
I didn't review that.
And cases? How many bottles are in a case?
I couldn't recall.
Is it a uniform measure or does it
It
vary?
is. I don't recall what was in our case packs.
And you mentioned that you learned of the opioid crisis through news articles. Are those articles that you found on your own or articles that were sent to you by colleagues or both?
Objection to form.
Both.
You've been handed what's marked Exhibit 6, which is a news report from the South Florida Sun Sentinel dated December 3rd, 2006. By December 3rd, 2006, you were working for Mallinckrodt, correct?
Yes?
And you were selling controlled substances for Mallinckrodt?
Yes?
This article headline is Alarm Over Prescription Drug Trade, Deaths Skyrocket as Dealers and Addicts Flock to South Florida. And I'm going to read a few sentences in this article and ask you about your knowledge of these circumstances. The first sentence is, out-of-state drug dealers and addicts are traveling long distance to visit Florida pain clinics, targeting the state because of its lax oversight of prescription drugs. Because of its lax oversight of prescription drugs makes scoring pills easier. Do you recall reading about people coming from out of state to purchase pills in Florida?
Objection to form.
Yes, I read articles about it.
Okay. And the next sentence of the article, next paragraph, states, the unwanted tourism alarms state officials who have watched deaths from prescription pain medications skyrocket in recent years. In 2005, such prescription drugs as hydrocodone, methadone, and oxycodone contributed to more overdose deaths than all other narcotics combined, according to Florida medical examiners. Now, as of 2006, you were selling hydrocodone, methadone, and oxycodone to your distributor customers, is that correct?
Objection to form.
Correct.
And were you aware that those pills were being sold en masse to pain clinics and doctors in Florida?
Objection to form.
I don't know at the time.
But you read articles that
I had read
described it.
articles.
Okay. And do you recall when you became aware of the supply, the problem of hydrocodone, methadone, oxycodone in Florida and people coming from
I
out
don't
of state?
recall the date.
Did you become aware of skyrocketing overdose deaths in Florida at some
Objection.
point?
Objection to form.
Just on periodical readings, newscasts, media.
Sorry, Mark. I'm passing to you what's previously been marked as Borelli Exhibit 24. This is an article from the Miami Herald with the title, Inside Broward County's Pill Mills. The date of the article is April 5th, 2009. You were working at Mallinckrodt selling controlled substances on that date, correct?
Yes.
And I'll read the first paragraph of the article. Broward County has become the painkiller capital of the United States, the notorious home to a cottage industry of storefront pain clinics selling alarming numbers of narcotics and feeding a brazen black market sprawling through the South and New England. And again, that description, that's something that you had become familiar with because of the articles and information you had seen?
Objection to form.
Yes.
Yes. You were aware that Broward County had become the painkiller capital of the United States?
Not
Objection to form.
specifically Broward County. I knew that there was issues in Florida.
And were you aware that as of this time, a number of your wholesale distributor customers were selling a significant portion of the pills they purchased from Mallinckrodt to indirect customers in Florida?
Objection to form.
I didn't know who they were selling all their products to.
Had you examined at all whether your wholesale distributor clients were selling significant portions of the controlled substances they bought from you to locations in Florida?
Objection to form.
That would have been product monitoring.
Okay, that's not something that you looked into?
Same objection.
Product monitoring was responsible for that.
Okay, but that's not something that you looked into?
No?
If you turn to the next page of this article, there's a paragraph, second from the top, that states, and the travelers come by the thousands, narcotics investigators say, from Kentucky, Ohio, West Virginia, Massachusetts, and other states. Prospective pill buyers sometimes camp outside clinics overnight, waiting for the doors to open, said Hollywood Police Captain Alan Siegel, director of the South Broward Narcotics Task Force. Now, is this circumstance of people coming from out of state to get pills at Florida pain clinics something that you had heard about?
Objection to form.
Yes?
And if you turn to the next page, there's a paragraph. Experts blame these clinics for a startling rise in prescription drug overdose deaths in Florida, including a 107% jump in oxycodone deaths in 2 years. And you were aware from the articles that you read about spiking overdose deaths in Florida?
Objection to form.
Yes.
And were you also familiar with the fact that many of those deaths were due to oxycodone overdoses?
Objection to form.
Yes.
And of course, you knew that a number of your wholesale distributor clients were purchasing large volumes of oxycodone manufactured by Mallinckrodt, correct?
Objection to
They're
form.
purchasing our oxycodone product.
Significant volumes of?
I don't know if there's what would be considered significant.
What would you consider significant?
I don't know.
Thousands of bottles significant?
Objection to form.
can't answer that. That would be product monitoring's job. As I said earlier, I never saw orders come in. Orders were done electronically.
Okay, tens of thousands of bottles seem significant to you?
Objection to form.
I can't answer that question. I have no idea what the significant amount is for a wholesaler.
Go a few more pages into the article, there's a paragraph that states, police in Kentucky, Tennessee, West Virginia, Ohio, and other states routinely arrest drug suspects who have oxycodone bought or prescribed in Florida, often using bogus medical records to justify the medication. 98% of it is coming out of Florida, said Captain David Hall, a narcotics detective in Scioto County, Ohio, outside Cincinnati. And again, you had heard of people coming to Florida to purchase pills. Had you also heard of those pills migrating out of the state of Florida to other areas?
Yes?
Objection to form.
Down below it states, more oxycodone is distributed in Florida than in any other state, 40% more than in second-ranked California in 2006, according to DEA data. Were you aware of that?
Objection to form.
I knew Florida was a heavy user of oxycodone products. I'm not certain what date they were.
And did that cause you any concern that Florida was such a heavy user of oxycodone products?
Objection to form.
Did it cause me any concern? Or just concerns on who the product was getting to as an end user?
Concerns that it was being diverted?
It could be.
That was a concern of yours?
Objection to form.
It could be.
Was it?
Objection to form.
It was, but we had product monitoring people in place to monitor those orders.
Number 7.
Sir, I'm handing you what's been marked Exhibit 7, which bears Bates stamp MNKT1 0000264-194. And while you're looking at that document, for the record, this is an email from Karen Harper dated November 28, 2009, sent to a number of people, including yourself. Is that correct?
Correct?
And the other folks to which this email was sent, John Adams, Robert Lesnack, Tim Berry, Bonnie New, Dave Irwin, Victor Borelli, are those all other national account managers for Mallinckrodt?
John Adams was a manager that I had reported to. I forgot that I reported to him. Robert Lesnack was in charge of methadone sales. Was a manager on that. The rest looked like they were salespeople.
And if you look at the subject line of this email, Ms. Harper is sending you a news article from RX News with the heading, Grand Jury Wants to Crack Down on Pill Mills, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Do you see that? Mm-hmm. And so if you go down into the body of the article that's attached to Ms. Harper's email, the first line of that is, Broward County has become known as the pill mill capital of the United States. Is that correct?
Where are you looking?
Right below the title of the article on the first page.
That's, okay, that's what it reads, yes.
Okay, and so this is an example of an article about the problems in Florida that was sent to you by Ms. Harper, describing the problems in Florida and the fact that Florida had become a pill mill capital, right?
Objection to form.
And if you go to the second page of that email, which attaches the article, third paragraph from the top, it states, according to the report, in the past 2 years, the number of pain clinics in South Florida mushroomed from 4 to 176, dumping 9 million dose units of oxycodone in our community every 6 minutes. And sir, you are aware that...
That was 6 months, you said minutes, I believe?
6 months, yeah.
Okay.
Fair correction. And then it continues, although the pain clinics originated in Broward County, they have spread north quickly throughout the rest of Florida. And so again, this is information contained in an article that was sent to you by Ms. Harper on November 28, 2009, that's correct?
Correct.
And at the time, you were selling substantial amounts of oxycodone to your wholesale distributor clients, correct?
Objection to form.
I don't know what substantial would be.
Were you selling...
As I stated earlier, I did not see the orders come in for my accounts. They were all submitted electronically.
Were you selling more oxycodone to your clients in 2009 than in prior years?
I don't know.
You never examined that?
I would look at sales reports and look at my top selling products, but I can't tell you for that specific date if we were.
You have no recollection one way or the other?
No.
Objection to form.
This wasn't a time for you in which that particular product was selling so much that it was causing your bonus to go up significantly?
Objection to form.
I don't know if that caused my bonus to go up or not.
Okay, that's not something you ever tried to figure out?
No.
Objection to form.
Bonus to me was just part of my regular program.
Number 8.
You've been handed what's marked Exhibit 8, which is an NPR, National Public Radio, article dated March 2nd, 2011. The heading is "The Oxy Express, Florida's Drug Abuse Epidemic."
Was this from the print media or was this the electronic media?
It was probably both. Yeah, according to the exhibit, it was heard on Morning Edition on March 2nd, 2011.
Okay.
Are you familiar with the term the Oxy Express?
Yes.
Can you tell me what that is?
I was just, Florida became known as an area where all the pain clinics opened up and where people went to get diverted product.
And the Oxy Express refers to the highway running north out of Florida, I-75. Are you aware of that?
Objection to form.
There's more than one highway running north out of Florida that probably transported drugs.
Okay. Are you familiar with I-75 being referred to as the Oxy Express?
At times.
And if you turn to the second page of that exhibit, under the heading Florida's Oxycodone Prescriptions, this states, doctors in Florida prescribe 10 times more oxycodone pills than every other state in the country combined. People come from all over the Southeast to visit the state's pain clinics. You are aware of that, correct?
Objection to form.
Eventually I was in my readings.
You were aware of that at the time that you were selling oxycodone to your wholesale distributor customers?
I could have
Objection to
been,
form.
I'm not certain exactly, referring to all the various states that have been thrown in front of me.
But generally, this is something that you were aware of?
Yes.
When you were still selling oxycodone to your
Yes.
wholesale distributor customers?
Yes.
Number 9.
You've been handed what's marked Exhibit 9, and while you're familiarizing yourself with it, this is an email from Kate Mallinckrodt, dated February 16th, 2009, sent to you, among others. The subject is Customer Demand Management and Allocations. Bates number MNKT10004916278. Who is Kate Mallinckrodt?
She was a product manager.
And if you look down at the email, have you had a chance to read it?
Not the whole thing, no.
Okay, why don't you go ahead and do that? So I'll read the first paragraph of the email, and then I'll ask you a question about that. It says, as you are aware, we have ramped up our supply capabilities surrounding oxycodone IR over the past 8 months and have done a tremendous job of meeting historic demand. Does this refresh your recollection on the demand for oxycodone back in 2009?
Objection to form.
I don't recall this particular email, and I do not recall Ethics having an issue with their product.
And what was Ethics?
Ethics is a competitor company that manufactured oxycodone.
And Ms. Mallinckrodt goes on to note, as a point of reference, our back order dollars have reached 90 million today. 40 million of that, or 45%, is oxycodone IR. Do you recall there being substantial back orders of oxycodone IR in 2009?
I don't specifically recall it, but according to this email, that we did have back order situation.
And what does that mean when Mallinckrodt has back orders?
It means that we don't have enough material, or the manufacturing process is such that we can't manufacture enough product to meet demand.
Okay, it means that the entire amount of oxycodone manufactured by Mallinckrodt had been purchased by your clients, your customers.
Could you restate the question?
The back order indicates that everything Mallinckrodt had to sell, all of the oxycodone IR, had been sold.
Objection to form.
I believe so.
And Mallinckrodt's response to that, according to this email, was to ramp up supply capabilities?
You'd have to ask the manufacturing people on that.
But is that what Ms. Mallinckrodt is telling you in this email?
It appears
Objection to
so.
form.
And do you recall Mallinckrodt being back order on oxycodone IR in 2009?
I don't recall this specifically, no.
Okay, if you go to the next paragraph of her email, she writes, after maximizing our manufacturing output, we know that we are not in the position to fulfill the total market demand as a result of Ethics exiting. Therefore, we are going to begin managing our customers' demand, or more appropriately, making them aware of what and when we will be able to ship based on our manufacturing output. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
So explain for me what's happening here.
Objection to form.
Well, based on a competitor leaving the marketplace, it put strains on our product supply, being that either we couldn't manufacture it fast enough, or we did not have enough raw material to manufacture the product.
And do you recall in this time frame there being a Mallinckrodt not being able to meet historic demand?
I don't recall this in the date. I do recall throughout my career that Mallinckrodt would have supply issues from time to time.
And do you recall there being a time when Mallinckrodt started managing allocations to customers for oxycodone IR?
Repeat the question, please.
Do you recall, as described in this email, that there came a point in time in 2009 in which Mallinckrodt started allocating what it had available of oxycodone IR among its different customers?
Do I recall that?
Yeah.
I recall that over the course of time, products were subject to being allocated.
And that's because Mallinckrodt couldn't manufacture enough to meet the demand?
Most likely.
And do you recall that Mallinckrodt tried to meet the demand by increasing the amount that it was manufacturing?
Objection to
You'd
form.
have to ask manufacturing that. I'm not certain.
Okay, is that what's described in this email?
It appears
Objection to
so.
form.
Do you recall whether not having oxycodone IR available was something that was upsetting to your customers?
Objection to form.
When the product was allocated or back ordered, yes, it could cause issues for a customer and the end users that they served.
And back in 2009, when you received this email, did you try to figure out why your customers were ordering so much oxycodone IR?
No.
Objection to form.
That's not something that occurred to you to do?
Objection to form.
Number 10.
You've been handed what's marked Exhibit 10, MNK T10000289707. And while you're reading it, this is an email from Kate Mallinckrodt to Karen Harper with the subject, requesting info, dollars of sales, oxycodone 15 and 30 milligram to Florida per year, and with an attachment, Oxy Florida sales 9/14/2010. Do you have any understanding of why on September 14, 2010, Ms. Mallinckrodt sent to Ms. Harper a report on Florida sales of oxycodone 15 and 30?
Objection to form.
Were you involved at all at that time in examining sales to Florida of oxycodone 15 and 30?
That I recall.
If you turn to the next page of this exhibit, there are some tables that describe sales of oxycodone 15 and 30, total and Florida. Do you see that? The first table indicates total end purchaser gross sales. Do you see
Yes.
that? And the table below that says total end purchaser, and it says FL.
Oh, there's a mark in front of the FL that I can't
Okay.
see that. Okay, yes?
So if you look down this, you'll see that, and then the third table has percentages. So as of September 14, 2010, starting in 2008, 28% of all of the oxycodone 15 and 30 was sold to downstream customers in Florida as of 2008. Do you see that?
Objection to form.
Were you aware of that?
Objection to form.
Not at the time.
Okay, and if you look at 2009, it shows that as of 2009, 39% of all of the oxycodone sales by Mallinckrodt were sold to downstream customers in Florida. Were you aware of that?
Objection to form.
And if you look at 2010, it shows that 47% of all of the oxycodone 15 and 30 purchased from Mallinckrodt by its wholesale distributors was sold to downstream customers in Florida. Do you see that?
Yes?
Objection to form.
So the percentages went from 28% in 08 to 47% in 2010. And sir, are you telling me that among your wholesale distributor customers, you were not aware of the portion of all of the oxycodone they purchased from you that was shipped to Florida?
I didn't have that data from my wholesalers or distributors on product from the end users. You'd have to ask Karen Harper, did our product monitoring had that information.
And did you ever ask to get the information?
For specific accounts, possibly.
But you never did any type of examination across the board for your wholesale distributor customers of where they were sending the bulk of the oxycodone they purchased from you?
I may have with one account,
And do you recall the details of that?
a Smith Drug.
And why did you do that?
I can't recall why it was done.
Do you recall what you learned?
If I recall properly, it was just that their customer, their end users were not located in Florida.
Okay, so you learned that they were not selling most of their drugs.
Smith Drug.
And did you learn anything else that caused you to be suspicious about Smith Drug?
Objection
No.
to form.
And you don't recall any other times investigating any of your other wholesale distributor customers to see who was purchasing from them the products that you sold to them?
Objection to form.
If an account requested for me to look at Steve's Drug on our particular product line, I had the ability to run a chargeback report and see how much product Steve's Drug was buying.
Would you agree with me that it's highly suspicious that in 2008, 28% of all oxycodone manufactured by Mallinckrodt was being sold and shipped to Florida?
Objection to form.
Would I agree with you?
Yes.
If I was a number analysis person looking at these numbers, looking at the baseline and the jumps, it would pique my interest, yes.
Okay, and then looking at 2009, would you agree with me that it is highly suspicious that out of all of the oxycodone manufactured by Mallinckrodt, 39% of it was being shipped to Florida?
Objection to form.
Would that pique your interest as well?
Objection to form.
Not necessarily. Based on the baseline number and the jumps, that would pique my interest.
Okay, and the following year at
That would
47%?
pique my interest based on the baseline of
Objection to
sales.
form.
And do you think it's possible that that amount of oxycodone was being legitimately consumed in Florida
Objection to form.
for medically necessary purposes?
You'd have
Objection.
to ask Karen Harper that, who does our product monitoring. I'm not in a position to answer that.
I'm handing you what's previously been marked Borelli Exhibit 22, which is MNK T10000368646. And while you're reading that, this is an email from Lisa Lundergan to Karen Harper, dated April 18, 2011. The subject, oxycodone FL update, with an attachment, oxycodone IR monthly update. Who is Lisa Lundergan?
She was a product manager at the time,
And Ginger Collier, to whom this is
in
CC.
charge of the marketing department.
And in this email, Ms. Lundergan writes, Karen, as requested, I have attached an update on oxycodone Florida activity. Please let me know if there's anything else that you would like added to this. I will update this as often as you need it. Just let me know. And do you remember what was going on in April of 2011 that would cause Ms. Lundergan to provide a report on
No.
Florida IR activity?
Objection to
No,
form.
I have no idea. You'd have to ask Lisa Lundergan or Karen Harper or Ginger Collier.
Okay, if you turn to the next page, there's some graphs.
Yep.
And if you look at the second one, the bar chart, it shows that in 2010, over 2 million bottles of oxycodone 5, 15, and 30 milligram tabs were sold to Florida. Do you see that? Mm-hmm. Does that seem like an alarming number of bottles to be sold to Florida?
Objection to form.
I don't have any data to compare it by.
In 2010, were you aware that that many bottles were being sold by your group to Florida?
No.
Objection to form.
And were you aware of which of your clients were sending significant volumes of oxycodone to Florida at that time?
Objection to form.
No, I didn't have that data. You'd have to ask Karen Harper.
Okay, if you turn to the next page of that exhibit, there's a table at the top. It says distributor data, all strengths, oxycodone HL. Do you
Yep.
see that list?
Yep.
And do you see that there's a list of Mallinckrodt customers on there. Let's go down that list, and I want you to tell me which of those customers were your customers. Let's start at the top. AmerisourceBergen, is that your customer?
I don't recall at that time.
Did they become your customer at some point?
At one point they were, but I don't recall if it was at this date.
Okay. Do you see that in 2010, AmerisourceBergen sent 85,881 bottles of oxycodone?
Objection to form.
And that would be the number of bottles that they sent to Florida, correct?
Objection to form.
Okay. The next one, ANDA. Was that your customer?
It could have been at that time, yes.
Okay. Do you see that they sent 22,000 bottles? Okay. So you did not know as of this time, because you had not looked to see the number of bottles of oxycodone that your wholesale distributor customer sent to Florida?
Objection to form.
I did not have data specifically into Florida. Karen Harper would have had that information.
Okay, so if you had called Lisa Lundergan and said, can you please send me information on the number of bottles that my clients sent to Florida, would she have been able to provide that to you?
Objection to form.
She most likely would have had to contact Karen Harper.
Okay, but the information was there.
Objection to
It
form.
could have been. I don't know if it was their account specific.
Okay, well, you know from this list that there's tracking of the number of bottles of wholesale distributor customers, number of bottles of oxycodone they shipped to Florida, right?
Objection to
So
form.
presumably, since this list was created and sent to Karen Harper, it also could have been sent to you
Objection to
if you
form.
had asked for it.
Objection to form.
Repeat the question.
This data had been assembled by Mallinckrodt, correct?
Objection to form.
Correct?
And if you had asked for it, you could have been provided that data too,
I
correct?
could have been, yes.
Okay, so let's keep going down the list. Tell me when we get to another one of your clients.
Cedardale at one time was my client.
Okay, and you see that they sent 19,000 bottles of oxycodone to Florida
Objection.
in 2010.
Same objection.
Okay, keep going down.
Epic is my customer.
Okay, who's below Epic?
Harvard was my, I don't know if it was at that time.
Okay, you see that they sent 79,039
Yep.
bottles
Objection.
of oxycodone to Florida in 2010.
Objection.
H.D. Smith was my account.
Okay, do you see how many bottles of oxycodone they sent to Florida in 2010?
Objection.
How many
to form.
was that?
Objection.
In 2010?
Yeah.
396,697.
Okay, keep going down.
Key Source was my account. I don't know if it was my account at that time. Same with Masters.
Okay, how many bottles did KeySource send into Florida in 2010?
373, 141.
Okay, what's below that? Master Pharmaceutical, was that your client?
It could have been at that time. I don't recall. That was an account that was transferred to me.
Okay, do you see the number of bottles of oxycodone
Yes, I
that
do.
Masters Pharmaceutical sent to Florida in 2010? How many bottles was that?
Objection to form.
238, 171.
Okay. Keep going down.
Optisource,
All right. How many bottles did Optisource send to Florida?
52, 923.
Objection.
Okay, and so
152, 923.
so in 2010, Optisource sent 152,923 bottles of oxycodone into the state of Florida.
Objection.
Correct?
Okay. Any other clients of yours on this list?
Nope. Premier Group may have been my account at that time.
And do you know, for each of the clients of yours that you identified, what portion of their total purchases of oxycodone from you were sent to Florida?
No, I don't.
Okay, is that information that you could have obtained had you asked for it?
Objection to form.
Possibly, yes.
Just before we leave that exhibit, if you go up to the cardinal preferred source A, that was your customer, wasn't it?
Cardinal Preferred Source was a customer of mine. I'm not certain on this time frame.
Do you see that from 2010 to 2011, Cardinal increased its shipments to Florida of oxycodone 57%?
Objection to form.
Do you have any recollection of why that occurred?
No, I don't.
Does it seem strange to you that at a time when most of the other distributors were decreasing their shipments into Florida, Cardinal was increasing its shipments?
Objection to form.
No, that could be various reasons. They could have Could have been a shift on our product being on a source program or not being on a source program.
And what does that mean?
Meaning if you, works like a medical formulary, if you're familiar with that. A wholesaler has a list of products, and since there's more than one competitor, one manufacturer of the product, Mallinckrodt may have a primary position. We may have been awarded a primary position on that product, which would increase your sales rather than a secondary position. Being preferred source, that's what that means. That when the pharmacy goes to order their product, they'll be sent the primary A source product.
Okay. And do you recall whether Cardinal was picking up volume as other regional wholesale distributors were slowing down their sales to Florida in 2011?
I don't
Objection to
recall.
form.
Number 11.
You have in front of you what's been marked Exhibit 11, Bates number MNKT10004888161. While you're looking at that, this is an email from Bonnie New, dated 6/16/2011, sent to you, among others, with the subject, OxyContin article from St. Louis Post-Dispatch, with the attachment 6/16/11 OxyContin PD article.rtf. Do you see that?
Yes?
And Bonnie New was one of the other national account managers.
Correct?
And her email states, "Hello, interesting read. I think it supports our suspicions in regard to the increased usage of the Oxy 30 mg." Do you see that?
Yes?
Let's turn and look at that article. Do you remember receiving this email?
Don't specifically remember getting it.
But you don't have any reason to think that it wasn't sent to you.
No, it was sent.
Okay, so if you look at that article on the next page, the title is "New OxyContin Form is Said to Curb Abuse." Do you see that? And this is from the New York Times. And if you move down a few paragraphs, the article states, Purdue Pharma, the maker of OxyContin, may have succeeded in reducing illicit demand for its reformulated drug. But in several dozen interviews over the last few months, drug abuse experts, law enforcement officials, and addicts said the reformulation had only driven up interest for other narcotics. Demand appears especially high for pure oxycodone that can come in 30 milligram pills. And then down at the end of the article it states, "It's just a matter of switching," said John Burke, commander of the Drug Task Force in Warren County, Ohio, and president of the National Association of Drug Diversion Investigators. See that? So do you remember having suspicions about the increased usage of Oxy 30 in June of 2011?
Objection to form.
Recall the specific date, but I recall this article.
And did you respond to Ms. New about the suspicions?
I don't recall if I responded to her, but we were, as a group, looking for why there was such an increase in Oxy sales.
Okay.
This was one of the main reasons why there was.
And you were aware of that at least as of 6/16/2011?
Objection to
Evidently.
form.
And did you, this refers to our suspicion, so I gather that's a suspicion that she shared with you?
Objection to form.
Correct.
And you had the same suspicion?
After reading the article, yes.
Okay. So as of June 16, 2011, you knew that the increased demand was due to the fact that OxyContin had been reformulated, and you knew that your clients were purchasing significant volumes of Oxy 30, right?
Objection to form.
I knew that the Oxy 30 was being purchased.
And so did you raise any concerns with anyone at Mallinckrodt about how maybe it would have been a good idea to decrease the sale of Oxy 30 at that time?
I may have, I don't recall.
Okay. Why do you think you may have?
I just may have, I don't recall.
If you did that,
With the nature of the article and the monitoring and things that were going on, like, I'm sure it was a subject that was brought up many times.
that would be a real concern, wouldn't it? If oxycodone manufactured by Mallinckrodt was, there was spiking demand because of the interest of people who were addicted?
Objection to
It would
form.
be a concern.
Yeah. And so if you had raised that with anyone, how would you have done that?
Objection to form.
Well, communicated with over the telephone. I don't know, I don't recall any emails that I may have sent.
And why over the telephone and not email?
I don't
Objection.
know. I don't know.
Do you have any specific recollection of raising this suspicion with anyone at Mallinckrodt?
No.
Number 12.
You have in front of you what's been marked Exhibit 12. The document cover sheet indicates the document was produced in native format, and it attaches a PowerPoint presentation. The presentation does not have Bates numbers because of the native format. The front cover email Bates number is MNKT10002450579. And if you look at this presentation, the title is Specialty Generics National Sales Meeting, November 9th, 2011. And did you have a national sales meeting every year?
Usually, yes.
And this says Covidian at the top. Is that the same as Mallinckrodt?
Objection to form.
Covidian was the parent company of Mallinckrodt.
Okay. Do you recall the 2011 national sales meeting?
Not the specifics of it.
Okay. Let's turn the page. And the heading on that page says what you accomplished in FY11. Is that full year 11 or what is FY?
Fiscal year.
Fiscal year 11. And the last item on there is performance regained senior management confidence. Do you know what that was about?
I have no idea what that actually means. You'd have to ask the person that wrote it.
And the bar at the bottom says, on behalf of Covidian and pharmaceutical sector senior management, thank you. So if you look at those bullet points, it sounds like 2011 was a successful year for Mallinckrodt.
Objection to form.
It could have been, I don't recall.
Okay. And if you turn to the page that has the heading Specialty Generic Product Families.
Yes, sir.
You see that?
Yes.
There's a list of controlled substances here. Do you see that?
Yes.
And for each one, there's an indication of the specialty generic product family. Do you see that? And it indicates the generic equivalent of, and it lists what each of these is the generic equivalent of. Do you see that?
Yes.
And then the next column says Covidian ranking, August 11th. And so that's ranking among your competitors where your sales stand.
I would
right?
imagine that's a
Objection.
market share data.
Okay. And in fact, the next column says Covidian market share, August 11th. Do you see that? And then it goes on. It has Covidian net sales and other indications. See that?
Yes.
So if you look at oxycodone IR, which is a generic equivalent of roxycodone, right? This shows that Covidian's ranking is number 1 out of 4, right? Do
Objection to form.
you see that?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, and if you look at Covidian market share, August 11th, Covidian/Mallinckrodt had 51% of the market share of oxycodone IR. Does that sound right to you?
Objection to form.
You would have to ask the person that made this.
Okay, do you recall having conversations about Mallinckrodt's market share for the different generic products that it sold?
It would be discussed at various sales meetings, put together by product managers. You'd have to ask them that information.
Okay, but what this suggests is that as of August 11th, at any rate, 51% of all of the oxycodone IR sold in the United States was sold by Mallinckrodt.
Correct.
Objection to form.
And if you move down this list, for oxycodone APAP, how did you say that?
APAP?
APAP, which is the generic equivalent of Percocet. This shows that the Covidien market share as of August 11th was 37%.
Objection to form.
So 37% of all of the oxycodone APAP sold as of August 11th was sold by Mallinckrodt.
Objection to form.
According to this, yes.
Okay. And if you go down much farther to hydromorphone, which is the generic equivalent of Dilaudid, Covidien ranking 1 out of 4. And Covidien, which again, Mallinckrodt's market share there is 67%.
Objection.
So 67% of all of the hydromorphone sold in the United States during the fiscal year 2011 was sold by Mallinckrodt.
Objection to form.
Correct? According to this and what the product managers put together.
Okay. So if you go to the next page, second bullet item says sales forces. Everyone was in the money, most between 100 to 115%. What does that mean?
Objection to
I would
form.
imagine that must have something to do with quota.
So everyone in Salesforce, that includes you, right?
Correct.
So the sales force was, everyone was in the money, everyone was selling well.
Objection to form.
Obviously, you're correct.
Okay. Let's go back up and look at the chart we were looking at a minute ago. If you look at Covidien net sales,
Yep.
okay? So fiscal year 2011, the top selling product among all of Mallinckrodt's products in terms of net sales was hydrocodone APAP at 104.7 million. You see that?
Objection to form.
And that's an increase of volume if you go further down from 2010, 2011. And the second item, second seller for Mallinckrodt for fiscal year 2011 was oxycodone IR at 75.1 million. Do you see that?
Objection to form.
And below that, oxycodone APAP at 56.6 million.
Objection.
So those were the top selling, this lists the top selling Mallinckrodt products in fiscal year 2011.
Objection to
so.
form.
So when there's articles that discuss explosive sales of oxycodone, for example, in this time period, you know from this that 51% of all those sales are by Mallinckrodt.
Objection to form.
I didn't look at it that way, but based on market share, it could be construed that way.
That would be an accurate statement. correct?
Objection to
I-
form.
Not certain it's an accurate statement. I didn't put this together.
Okay, but assuming that the information in this table is accurate, it would be accurate to say that,
If you poured it through a funnel, that would be an accurate statement.
okay. So if you're looking for the source of all of the oxycodone in the United States, oxycodone IR, as of August 2011, you know that 51% of it was sold by Mallinckrodt.
Objection to form.
According to this, yes.
So we've been going another hour. Is now a good time for a break?
Let me ask a few more questions about this exhibit, and then,
Oh, I'm
yes.
sorry. I thought you were
Yeah.
finished with it.
Now, you're aware that in 2011, several of Mallinckrodt's major wholesale distributor clients had their licenses to sell controlled substances suspended by the DEA.
Objection to
I
form.
recall that, but I don't recall specific dates.
Okay. But do you recall that it was in 2011?
I don't recall the
Objection to
date, as I just stated.
So when you look at this November, so this is towards the end of 2011, November 9th, 2011 sales meeting that talks about upbeat performance and sales being in the money, there's no reference anywhere to anyone being reprimanded for selling controlled substances to wholesale distributors whose licenses were suspended by the DEA. Is that right?
Objection to form.
I don't have a copy of that, of what you're looking at.
This is the exhibit we were just going through. Do you see any reference anywhere in that exhibit to anyone being reprimanded for selling controlled substances to wholesale distributors whose licenses were suspended by the DEA that year?
Objection to form.
I don't see that I have the same document you have. It's just the page that you're looking at?
I believe it's the same document.
Okay,
So just flip through the whole document.
okay, it's this back page, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have you seen any reference in there?
Could you repeat the question then, please?
Is there any reference anywhere in this PowerPoint presentation about Mallinckrodt's successful full year 2011, about anyone being reprimanded for selling controlled substances to wholesale distributors whose licenses were suspended by the DEA?
No, not that I see.
And do you recall whether your senior management, and there's a thing here, it says, on behalf of Covidien and pharmaceutical sector senior management, thank you, on page 2. Do you recall anyone from senior management raising as an issue the problem of Mallinckrodt selling controlled substances to wholesale distributors whose licenses were suspended by the DEA during this sales meeting?
Not that I recall.
Sorry?
Fine time to take a break.
Go off the record.
We're going off the record. Time is left.